The Calgary Flames sweep a homestand. That's 4 in a row in 4 different ways. They now hit the road for 4 more out east. Looking forward to this road trip for sure. They are getting the goaltending. Defensively, they are stout. Offensively, there's still some questions, but they're getting the job done. We're a quarter way into the 24-25 season. It's time to send home some report cards. Welcome to another episode of the Red Mile Rundown. I am Johnny Stope, your host, and I'm pleased to be with you today. Alongside me, as always, Robert Munich. How we doing, Robert?
Doing good, man. We got a fun episode up ahead here, so I'm really looking forward to that. But no, things are great. We got a busy week of Flames games up ahead. It's a good time to be a hockey fan. I'm liking this.
Before we dive into the hockey, let's just quickly remind everyone out there, we are available wherever you get your podcast, your preferred platform. Don't forget to leave us a review and give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate everyone there. We had our second best week ever last week with downloads and listens, so we appreciate those. Keep those rolling in. Robert, really quickly here before we dive into our report card part of the podcast. 4-game win streak. The Flames sweep it all 4 of those games. They won them in different ways. They looked good doing it. They get set for the road trip. Looking back on the week, your overall thoughts on the Flames and what you witnessed. I quite enjoyed these performances as the Flames found different ways to get the job done. We saw shootout spectaculars. We saw really good goaltending performances. Your thoughts, just really quickly here, what we saw this past week from the Flames as they wrapped up that 4-game homestand.
Well, the Flames can thank Dustin Wolf in large part for getting up to those 4 wins there. He was outstanding in wins against the Predators, Islanders, and Rangers. Mm-hmm. Clearly the best player on the Calgary Flames right now, one of the best players in the entire National Hockey League. So you got to give him all the credit in the world. And the one game that really stood out to me was the one against the Rangers. I thought that was by far and away their best win of the season. I know opening night was a lot of fun, but I thought the Flames essentially controlled the game from puck drop until the final horn against the Rangers. They were outstanding. Got a ton of shots on net, generated a lot of offense. Dustin Wolf was great. They were good defensively. You know, they held a high-powered Rangers team to only 2 goals and kept them to the outside for most of the night. It was thoroughly impressive. And if they can have more performances like that this season, they're going to put themselves in a good position come the playoffs.
I am a guy who enjoys structure to my hockey teams and to the hockey game. You like your creativity and all that finish at the other end, but they had really good defensive structure against the Rangers and gave them very little. Their stars were very quiet in that game. I thought they did a lot of good things against Minnesota as well. Everyone's going to give Dustin Wolf the due credit because he deserves the credit. Let's not forget how good you had to have been in an afternoon game in those snowy conditions in Calgary to win that game against Minnesota on the weekend. So I want to give Dan Vladar his just due as well. I think he was really good in that hockey game, helping the Flames sweep that 4-game homestand. A Eastern road trip, 4 games on the road. They start with Ottawa, another prime game on the Monday night. You've probably already watched that game when listening to this podcast since it doesn't come out till Tuesday. So looking forward to that broadcast and whatever else we get on this road trip. Let's not waste any more time, Robert. This was absolutely your idea, and I love it to bits. Going to send home some report cards here. We're a quarter way through the season. We want to talk about each player on the roster. So this episode, we're going to run through each guy who is active on the roster, who's played regularly for the Flames, give them a letter grade, and kind of explain why we gave them that grade. And that might lead to some debate, some rants, or whatever else it may go. So, Robert, I'm going to throw it over to you to get it started with us with Rasmus Andersson. First up, as we go alphabetically here through the roster, your grade on Rasmus Andersson.
Well, before we dive in Andersson, let's give just a little bit of context here. So the whole idea is we're going to be giving out letter grades, and we're kind of basing it off what we expected from the player heading into the season. So, like, for example, you know, we're not going to give Kevin Rooney a D, even though he hasn't been great this year, but like relative to expectation, he's probably more of like a B. That's kind of like an example of what I'm talking about. So there's that. And then we'll give out letter grades. So we got A for above average, B as average, kind of meeting expectations, C, below expectations, and then D, even further down than that, just being absolutely dreadful this season. So those are the 4 letter grades we'll be giving out today for all these Flames players. So I'll kick things off with Rasmus Andersson. I will give him an A. I think he's been their best skater this season. I would say he was their team MVP in the month of October. I'd say November is probably Dustin Wolf, but as a skater, I think he's been the team MVP so far this season. And the big thing for me is that he just touches all aspects of the game. You look offensively, he leads the Calgary Flames in points. You look defensively, he plays top minutes against top competition. He's on the first penalty kill unit. He's a leader in ice time. Him and Kevin Ball have made up a fantastic defense pair that's been, probably the best D pair since the start of the season. These two have been great together so far, and I think Rasmus has a big role in that. And then on top of that, he's also just a great leader in the locker room. The stare downs have been a ton of fun this year. I love every Rasmus Andersson this season, so I'm giving him an A. And if I could give him an A plus, I would, but we'll stick to the rules. I'll give him an A. Where do you have Rasmus?
I have his stare downs as A plus for sure. I gave Andersson an A as well for a lot of things you just mentioned. I wanted to give him an A plus, but I couldn't quite give it to him because not often you get a guy who leads the team in scoring. I don't know anybody who had him at 13 points through 21 games this year. He's almost at 25 minutes a night. This guy does everything for the Flames. He's a Swiss Army knife for this team. He's on the PK. He runs a power play unit. He's done everything you ask for a number 1 defenseman in the National Hockey League, and he's done it in spades. This guy brings the energy. He brings the leadership, and he does. I don't think there's one bad thing he does on the ice for the Calgary Flames, and he's provided himself a really good D partner with Kevin Ball, who we'll talk about in just a minute here. But he's worked well with his defensive partner, and I think he's made Ball a better defenseman for it. So I give Rasmus Andersson also gets an A. Next up on the list is the captain, Michael Backlund here. I'll go first on Michael Backlund, and I like that we worded it that based off our expectations, what would we give these guys? So for me, Michael Backlund also gets an A. This guy has probably been the most consistent player on the Flames this year. He provides more than just points. Remember, his leadership qualities come into play here. He's a guy who you need someone to get going, say Coronado to get going, you put him with Michael Backlund. He's the fixer of this group, and he's winning his face-offs. He's doing his penalty kill job. He's doing everything that you ask of Michael Backlund that we've seen for almost a decade now. He's still doing it, and he's still doing it at a high elite level. We saw him and Coleman get broken up, and his line was still effective, still did the job that he was asked to do, and he's allowing his line mates to have the freedom to play their game as well. So for me, Michael Backlund gets an A. Where do you stand with Michael Backlund?
I'm going to go with a B for Michael Backlund. I've loved his game this year. I think he's been really good. But I mean, we're kind of basing this on expectations heading into the year, and everything Michael Backlund has done this season is what I have expected of him. I don't think he's gone above and beyond anything that we've seen from him really in the past. He's got 9 points in 21 games so far this year, so under a 40-point pace. I think that's probably why I have him as a B, is just because the offensive production isn't quite where you want it. You'd probably want him more in the 40-45 range. But overall, like you said, I mean, he's been great defensively. He gets all the hardest matchups. First penalty kill unit. He blocks shots. You love to see that. He's added a bit of a physical element to his game. He's on the second power play unit, and the power play unit with him on it over the last few games here has looked really good, and he's been an important part of that. And then the thing that you said that I think is most important is just how he makes his line mates better. So you look so far this season, Connor Zary probably played his best hockey on a line with Michael Backlund. Matt Coronado has been playing phenomenal ever since being put on the wing with Michael Backlund. Sharon Govich has looked good in the last few games on his wing. And then, of course, you have Blake Coleman as well, who, those two are just a fantastic duo. And I do think Backlund elevates Coleman's game as well. So he's doing everything that you expect from him. He's doing a great job of it. I don't think he's exceeded expectations. That's probably, I wouldn't give him an A personally, but I mean, you really can't ask for much more from this guy as like a 35, 36-year-old. And I really like the leadership he's shown this year too. It's been a very strong season from Michael Backlund.
I'm going to try very hard not to give everyone an A, because this next one's also going to get an A for me, but because this guy has been way better than anyone's expectation is. So I'm not just giving everyone A's for those who are listening early on the podcast here. That's just how the first three have worked out. We're talking about Kevin Ball next, the defensive partner to Rasmus Andersson. I think Kevin Ball's provided more offense than we expected. He's got 6 points through his first games. This is a stay-at-home defenseman guy. I glossed about him on the last episode of the podcast and how much I appreciate his game and how he's been the biggest surprise for me for the Calgary Flames. And that's why I give him an A, because the expectations for him, for me, were just be a steady guy that can play in your middle pairing, maybe get elevated a little bit, and not be underwater when you're on the ice. And he's done way more than that. He's one of the first guys over the ice to kill penalties. He's one of the first guys over the ice to, at the end of a hockey game, to protect leads. There's nothing that defensively we've seen Trevor Ball that makes me doubt this guy in this game and his growth. He's still young, so there's still more to go here for Kevin Ball. So I give him an A because of how much he is blowing my expectations out of the water. Robert, for you, Kevin Ball's grade.
I mean, I don't know how you could choose a grade other than an A with Kevin Ball, because he has exceeded expectations. He's been phenomenal this year. And the one thing you mentioned there that I really like is youth. I don't think people like around the NHL realize that Kevin Ball is only 24 years old. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like he plays hockey like he's like a 32, 33-year-old veteran defenseman with just the smart decision making, the defensive awareness. Like, he has been rock solid for the Calgary Flames. And like I mentioned with Rasmus Andersson, they've made up the best pairing on the Calgary Flames, the guys that play the hardest minutes. You love to see that. The thing I really like about Kevin Ball is just like his size, his reach, his length. Like, he makes it very difficult to play against in his own end. He, like, whether it's breaking up cycles or being a physical presence in front of the net, like, I could almost guarantee that there are a lot of forwards out there that do not like playing against this guy.
Yeah.
Puck moving has been really good. I found he's a good skater. He's actually a better skater for his size than I thought. I've really liked that part of his game. And like you mentioned, he's got 6 points this year. He had 11 all of last season. He has more 5-on-5 points this year than Nazem Kadri, which is like pretty crazy.
Insane.
So Kevin Ball, give the guy all the credit in the world, man. And we talked about this last week. Like, where would the Flames be without Kevin Ball? Like, he's been their steady number 3 back there, and he's been arguably one of the most important players this season. So yeah, big Kevin Ball fan. Have to give him an A. There's no other way.
Yeah, he's been absolutely tremendous for the Flames this year. The next guy on the list, he hasn't played a ton for the Flames, but we figured we'd include him in here. Interested where you go on this one, Robert, with Tyson Barrie.
Yeah, I mean, we won't spend too much time on Barrie because he hasn't played all that much this year. I think he's been pretty much what you expected from him. The surprising thing with him this year is that he actually has some of the best analytics and underlying numbers on the Calgary Flames this season. When it comes to high danger scoring chance percentage, he's first. Yeah, he's up there with expected goals. So, I mean, the stats are really good, but from the eye test, he's just been okay. To me, it looks like the game has kind of passed him by a little bit. It looks like he's kind of lost a step. He's not quite as good a skater as he once was. So overall, I'd say Barrie's been a B. It's kind of been what I expected. I didn't think he'd be playing all that much, and when he has, he's been okay. He's been all right. He hasn't been a detriment by any stretch, but he also hasn't been a huge difference maker either. So I think he's been just solid. He's just been okay with a B letter grade.
I'm gonna go B- here because he was brought in to help the power play, and he has 0 power play points. Might be nitpicky on my point, but only 2 points through 9 games played. He's been fine, just like you mentioned. He's done the job when he's put out there to play. Doesn't get to play a ton, and he's exactly what you brought him in to do. Just a veteran presence, a good number 7 defenseman that you come in out of the lineup. So you can't be too harsh on the guy, but you also can't be too praiseworthy on the guy. 9 games isn't all that much to shake a stick at either when they play 21 on the season. So he's been fine, and that's where you put him in that B- grade there. Next up is a guy who's in and out of the lineup himself as well, and that's the defenseman Jake Bean. This one was a difficult grade for me to give Bean because I like his game. I had higher expectations than some other guys. It might be the fact that I still remember the Calgary Hitman version of Jake Bean. I got to give him a C because I don't think he's quite where I thought he would be given the role that I thought he would play for this team. A lot of people thought that he might press for top 4 minutes. He could be a guy that might help more offensively with his game, the way that he can skate and pass the puck. Just I need to see more from Jake, and I really like the player, really like the game. He's got a decent sized frame on him for a defenseman in the modern game. Just not seeing enough personally for Jake, and that's why I think why he's been in and out of the lineup for the Flames as well. He doesn't get to play every night, and he plays with an array of guys. And when you have a guy like Braden Pahal that's your defensive partner more times than not when you actually are playing, I thought we see him push up the ice a little bit more. So for me, it's just a C grade, not quite to the expectations I had for him. But again, I could be a harsher grade because I had higher expectations than most guys out there. Robert, your grade and thoughts on Jake Bean?
So I'll go with a B. So I'll go a little bit different than you. So this season, I've loved the job Ryan Huska has done as head coach, but there are two criticisms I have of him, and one is how he's handled Jake Bean. In my opinion, I think the Flames' best starting 6 on defense are Ball Anderson, Uyghur Miramanov, and Bean and Pahal. I really think that Bean and Pahal pairing has been really good this year, especially over the last month or so. I think Jake Bean should be in the lineup a lot more than he is. And I think the way Huska's kind of used him hasn't been ideal. And I would say it hasn't been like unfair, but I just like to see him use Jake Bean a little more because I do think that he is a regular. I think he's better than Barry. I think he's better than Joel Hanley. And I like that pairing with him and Pahal. And it's hard if you're a guy like Jake Bean and you're in and out of the lineup all the time. You only get like maybe one game at a time or 2 games in a row, and then you're out of the lineup. How are you supposed to establish your game? How are you supposed to find any sort of consistency? It's hard to do that when you're in and out of the lineup. So I'm going to give him a B. I've liked his game when he's been in the lineup. He hasn't been anything flashy or spectacular, but I think he's been rock solid. And I think him and Pahal deserve a longer leash as a pair together. And I wouldn't mind seeing him go with those two guys for, an extended stretch of games here. So yeah, my grading is a B, just a little bit higher than yours.
Yeah, I like that as well. I wonder what Jake Bean would be if there was a little bit more rhythm and a little bit more consistency in his lineup, being in the lineup more. I guess what I'm trying to say. If he gets in the lineup more regularly, how much further along would his game be, and more comfortable he would feel with this team? We move on. I'm gonna throw out another A grade here because you can't deny what this next player brings to the lineup. He's just one of those old, reliable guys. Blake Coleman up on deck here. He wears a letter for this team, and there's nothing that he doesn't do that this team asks him to do. Penalty kill, power play, killing off games, starting periods, whatever you ask of Blake Coleman, he just goes out there and happily gets the job done. This guy has been put up the lineup, down the lineup with about 100 different guys on his wing as well. When he plays with Michael Backlund, they've been split up, and he still does the same job. I really liked what I saw the last game out of Blake Coleman when he was playing away from Michael Backlund. He was still able to perform at an extremely high level. This guy is Mr. Fix-It for the Flames as well. This is a guy that you can lean on when you're Ryan Huska to have a veteran leadership. He's been there. He's done that. He's won cups, and he's showing his experience each and every game for the Flames. Very good player for the young kids to lean on and learn from. And Blake Coleman, got to give this guy an A grade because he is absolutely taking every expectation I had from the guy and just continually performing above it each and every game. What do you say about Blake Coleman?
Yeah, I liked his season too. I'm going to give him a B. I think he's kind of met expectations this year. I think last season you definitely would have given him an A just because of the goal scoring, but the offense is down by quite a bit this season, but it's back down to kind of a career norm. It's not around that 30 goal pace that he was at last season. He's at about a 36-point pace through the first 21 games of the season. But that's kind of what you expect from Blake Coleman. He's in that kind of 35 to 40 point range every single year, and you're not really necessarily paying him to produce offense. You're paying him to be a veteran presence, like you said, a Mr. Fix-It type of player, good defensively, responsible. And then when he does chip in with offense, that's always an added bonus. And the nice thing about Coleman this year, I know the whole Flames team has kind of struggled to produce offense, but over the last 18 games, he's third on the team in scoring behind Mackenzie Weegar and Matt Coronado. So he has been producing points. He just didn't pick up 1 million points like a lot of guys did in those first 3 games when the team scored 16 goals. But he's been pretty solid in the last 18 here, and kind of similar to Michael Backlund. I mean, the guy's a great leader. He's plays those tough matchups. He's physical. He plays well on the PK. I like his ability to check. He's just a great player. His analytics are some of the best on the team as well. So I'll give Blake Coleman a B. I've been pretty impressed with the first quarter of his season so far.
I'm going to let you keep going here, Robert. Next up on the list is Matt Coronato.
Matt Coronato, A. Absolute A, 100%. I've loved his game since being recalled back in October there. He leads the Calgary Flames in scoring since his recall in those last 15 games. He has 9 points. That shot is just so dynamic. That goal that he scored against the New York Islanders, it was either the Islanders or Rangers, where he came in off the wing and just ripped a snapshot past the goalie. That was phenomenal. I think with Coronato, if he can just find a way to find more kind of quiet areas in the ice and find more ways to get his shot on net, he could be like a legit 30-goal scorer for multiple years in this league. Like if he could, like Sean Monahan used to be really good at that. He used to be really good at finding open space and having a guy like Johnny Gaudreau feed him. If Coronato can improve that aspect of his game and get more shots on net, man, watch out. He's going to be a great player, and I have loved everything I've seen from him. Since he's been called up, I would argue he's been their best forward. And I don't really think it's that close. So Matt Coronato gets an A from me.
Man, I'm going to sound like a jerk now. I only gave him a B+. Because I took into consideration the beginning of the season as well. And he was slower out of the gates for me, and I expected him to fight for a playoff spot more than he did. I expected him to do a little bit more to stay in the lineup in the beginning of the season. But since his call-up, everything that you just said is absolutely spot on. So maybe I am being a little bit too harsh. Maybe it should be an A or an A- for me too. But I'll give him a B+ because I just want to see a little bit more consistency out of his game. The expectations for him should be everyday NHLer, should be able to be performing and scoring goals for the Flames. That's what he's doing. And so just keep going, Matt. Make me eat my words a little bit here. Make me give you a A+ grade come the halfway point of the season. I like what he's bringing to the lineup. I like his attitude since he's been recalled. I took into consideration the beginning of the season a little bit for me as well, and that kind of brought the grade down a little bit for me. So come at me in the comments if you guys must, how crazy I am about Matt Coronato. Keep it going, Matt. Make me eat my grade and my word come the midpoint of the season when we revisit this all, because we will, and we'll see where he is at that point. Matt Coronato, though, really good season, and he's done really well beside 2 guys. And I'd like to see what he continues to do without both Backlund and Coleman surrounding him on a line. How much further can his game grow here?
Well, and just with Coronato, that's actually a very fair letter grade. I actually might be a little bit high now when I think of it, because when you do take that first part of the season in consideration, that actually probably should bring it down a little bit. But I've loved what he's done the last 15 games, and the one aspect of his game that I think has improved the most is his puck carrying. I find the puck is on his stick way more in these games since he's been called up. He looks like a way more kind of dynamic offensive player, and I don't know if that's confidence. I don't know if that's coaching or just improvement in skating and hands, but you've seen a massive improvement in his game, and you love to see it. And the Flames need it. They struggle to score, and this is one of the few guys who doesn't really struggle to do that.
I think you are bang on, though. Since his recall, he has been the best Flames forward, although Connor Zary, for me, still in that conversation, but that's coming up later in the show. Next up, this one, I wish we weren't limiting ourselves to just the 4 grades. For this next player, I wish I could give a G grade to, because the expectations are there, and I even tempered them this year saying, just get me to 55, 60 points, be a positive player when you're on the ice, and just provide a little bit of leadership for the Flames. This guy's fallen short on a lot of those metrics. All due respect to the player and what he brings, and I spent 3 seasons defending this guy, and 3 seasons being one of his biggest fans. And I called him out before the season began on the pod, saying, "Show me, give me something to be excited about." But for Jonathan Huberdeau, I have to give you a D because the expectations weren't even that high, and you're still projected to be way lower than those expectations. You've brought nothing. You continually try these high danger cross ice passes that create. Just in that last game against Minnesota, everyone's focused that he got his 500th assist. Congratulations, but you also cost the Flames a goal. You're just not helping the team. At best, you're a wash on any given game. I need something more from him. You need to see more from him. Simplify the game, play more north-south, stop this fancy stuff, stop trying to spin around and create out of nothing to give you nothing. It's just not working. And I had a buddy try to come at me and talk to me and say, well, at a certain thing, the Flames have to keep trying different things for the Flames. The Flames have tried everything. He's had about 900 different centermen, 14 different wingers, and it's just not working. It's on the player to fix it and get it going. So for me, it's a D grade. He is not meeting a single expectation of mine. Robert, I'll stop ranting and I'll let you give your grade here.
You know, John, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to go Huberdeau with an A. I'm waiting for
how low were your expectations? How low were your expectations?
I'm totally kidding. I am 100% with you. It's a D. There's no other grade to give him. I think he's been atrocious recently. I don't really think there's any other way to put it. I mean, he got off to a really solid start there. The first 3 games of the season, he put up 5 points, and he was making plays that you saw kind of the old Jonathan Huberdeau a little bit. And to start the season, I was thinking to myself, like, is he back? Could he turn out to be that player from Florida again? The answer to that question is no. It's a big fat no. In his last 18 games, he has 6 points, 3 of those being assists. This is supposed to be one of the best playmakers in the NHL, one of the best passers of the puck of his generation. He has 3 assists in his last 18 games. That's a 14 assist pace over 82 games. And that 18 games is not a small sample size. That's almost a quarter of the season. He has 3 assists. To me, if Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be an effective player, it's all about production. I don't care how he plays defense. I don't care how he plays on the penalty kill. I don't care what kind of leader or person he is in the locker room. It's all about production when you make $10.5 million. And he isn't coming close right now to being the guy that the Calgary Flames need him to be. 14 assist pace over 82 games. That's insane. Like, Kevin Ball is on pace for more than that. It's nuts. So, and like when you're watching him, it's so frustrating because like plays die on his stick. He turns the puck over a lot. He can't make simple passes. It's like for Flames fans, like I try my best during the games to just not pay attention to him, but it's so hard not to because he is making 10.5, and you know how good he's been in the past. You know how talented this guy is. That's the thing that probably drives people crazy is like, we all know how good this guy is, but he hasn't shown up since joining the Calgary Flames. It's been super frustrating. So yeah, it's a D for me. And the one question that kind of came to mind for me, and I'll throw it to you. If you were to put some truth serum into his teammates and ask them, like, what do you think of Jonathan Huberdeau right now on the ice? Not as a person, because he seems like a fantastic guy, but like the hockey player Jonathan Huberdeau, I wonder what his teammates would say, because he is the highest paid player on the team by a considerable margin. He's the highest paid player by $3.5 million a year, and he's got 6 years left on his contract. I'd really be curious to know what his teammates think of his play on the ice right now, and if they're getting frustrated by it, or if they just kind of, shrug their shoulders and say, who cares? But, what do you think the teammates would say if you were to ask them and give a truthful answer to that?
There's a Jonah Hill gift that I like to use where he's sitting on the couch and his head flops back and like the biggest, deepest sigh comes out of his mouth. That's how I picture his teammates when he botches something, when he's not playing to what he's supposed to be doing, when the simple play was there and he tries that insane between the legs, behind the back, spin around type pass he likes to try across 19 different players. I just imagine all of his teammates just the heaviest sighs. We're just like, come on, dude. Like, it just died again on your stick. There has to be frustration there. These guys are professional. They're going to like the guy in and of itself. We all have a coworker that we enjoy, but we don't like them work-wise. It's all don't lie to me. We all have one of those coworkers. That has to be the guy for these guys, where they're just like, come on, dude. Even if it was a half a point per game pace and he was showing a little bit of creativity, but he was making your safe plays. He was making the consistent plays. I think we as fans would feel better. Media guys would feel better. Huska would feel better. I don't know how much trust there is in this player other than the fact that we have to play him because he's $10.5 million. I wonder if you put true serum into Ryan Huska, if he would just tell this guy, no, you're going to get 12 minutes a night and sit at the end of the bench. I wonder how much he would love just to do that, because there's guys that we're talking about on the show today that deserve bigger minutes. Coronado deserves the 18 minutes compared to Huberdeau. Connor Zary deserves extra minutes. Heck, Kirkland deserves extra minutes that he's not getting. There are guys out here that provide what Huberdeau is not providing, and expectations were literally half a point per game from some people I saw, and just not getting there. And you talk about only 3 assists. That's for the Flames. If you take it across, he might have more assists if you include what he gave the Minnesota Wild on Saturday, or what he gave LA Kings, or any of those other teams we've played when his cross-ice passes get picked off and they go the other end and they score. It's just not there. And sure, the fit might not be there as a player to the team. The team might need to do more for the player, but at the end of the day, you're getting paid $10.5 million. You're a professional. Where's the effort? It's as simple as that for me. Where is the effort? Any more on Huberdeau before we move on here?
No, I mean, I think you summed it up pretty good right there. Just that sigh, just that, like, come on, just imagine where like the Flames could be this season if Huberdeau was playing to like around like a 60 to 70 point pace. You know, there's an extra like 5 or 6 goals right there. And the Flames have been playing in a ton of 1-goal games this season. You know, they might have an extra, 2 to 5 or 6 points even if this guy could just produce at the level that we know that he can and has in the past. That's a really frustrating thing. And, I like your comparison about, comparing the hockey team to somebody else's work, like somebody else's line of work. Imagine if someone's making 2 or 3 times the amount of money that you are, but isn't producing anything. That's got to be extremely frustrating. I bet you a lot of the players on the Flames are kind of feeling that way right now. And you hope that he's going to be able to find his game. We saw last season that he went through the entire month of December without a point. And then once January 1st hit, he started to pick up his game a little bit. So hopefully that sort of similar thing happens, in the next 3 quarters of the Flames season. But I'll be honest, I'm not holding my breath. I don't see anything from him that makes me think that he's going to be able to turn this around anytime soon.
And just imagine how much better the power play would have been if he was on that power play and just producing a little bit higher of a clip. Some of those simplified passes might have helped that power play earlier get off the schneid than it did.
Definitely.
For me right now, Huberdeau is a $3 million third-line player who's going to give you turnover problems. That's how I see him now. It's unfortunate, hoping for better come down the line. The next player up is not going to get a favorable grade for me either. He's another guy that I had expectations for. Probably had the highest expectations for this player based on what he did last year for this team, what he's asked to do for this team. He's one of the higher paid players on this team. I ranted on him last episode and how disappointed I was in his game, so I'm not going to have a long answer here on this one. But for me, Nazem Kadri, he too is going to get that D grading because I expected a lot more from this guy. And I'm not talking just on the scoreboard. I'm talking leadership-wise. I'm talking attitude-wise. I'm talking the whole shebang. His body language on the bench is just, it's not positive. He's always trying to blame Kuzmenko for something, or he's always looking at somebody else for something. There doesn't seem to be a lot of, hey, I need to be better here, or let me help pick you up as you're struggling in your game. So for me, it's just all fallen short from Nazem Kadri. I don't want to give him a D grade because I really need this player to be good for the Flames. The Flames need this player to be good, and it can be good from this player. But for right now, he's getting a D for me, and I hate giving it to him, but he's earned it. How about you, Robert?
Yeah, there's no denying that he's been really bad this year. Which sucks because I really like the player. I like the person. I think he's a solid guy, and it just hasn't been there for some reason. And maybe it's just another slow start. I mean, he had a pretty slow first 21 games of the season last year as well. So maybe he's going to be able to kind of come out of that slump and turn back into that 60, 70 point player that we know that he can be. But up to this point of the season, he has not been good. He only has 11 points in 21 games, which is about a 40-point pace. That'd be one of the worst. The worst. I think it's the worst statistical output he's had since his rookie season in the NHL. That dates back, 11 or 12 years ago. At 5-on-5, he's not scoring. He only has 5 points at 5-on-5, which is 7th on the team. Like I mentioned earlier, Kevin Ball has more 5-on-5 points than Nazem Kadri. He's a team worst, -12. And plus minus when you're very high up in the pluses or you're very low in the minuses, I think it says something about you as a player and the way you're playing. And being a team worst -12, having one of the worst plus minuses in the NHL over the last 18 games is, on a team that's winning, on a team that's in the top 10 of the NHL, is pretty crazy. And the next closest player is Sharon Govich, I believe, at -6. So there's even a huge discrepancy between him and the next closest player. And then you look at the underlying numbers. I posted his underlyings on Twitter last week. He has some of the worst defensive metrics on the entire team. And the Flames have been outscored 10-5 with Kadri on the ice at 5-on-5. He's been really bad to start this year. I also give him a D grade. I don't think you can give him anything else other than that because, once again, expectations were high. I mean, people were expecting him to be in that 60, 70 point range leading the offense, and he just hasn't done it yet. So hopefully we'll chalk it up to it being another slow start for him like last season. But so far, it's been pretty ugly for Nazem Kadri.
It's like him and Hubert are having a contest of who can project to be lower in points. It's mind numbing how both these guys can be this awful, and yet this team continues to win hockey games and be just right there with Vegas for the lead in the division. It's baffling to me. All right, let's have a little fun with this next one because I only gave out 2 A+ in my entire rankings, and this next guy gets one of them because he had zero expectations. He wasn't even on my radar to be a Calgary Flame this season. I expected him to be a season-long regular and help that team battle and win hockey games in the American Hockey League. Justin Kirkland, though, he comes up here, he gets an opportunity, he takes the opportunity, and he runs with it. It's shootout winners, it's fourth-line minutes. He played third-line center for a couple of games, and he's just out there doing the best job that he can do given where he's put in the lineup. And when you have no expectations and it's carefree, almost carefree, you're going to surpass those expectations, of course, because there's nothing there holding you back in the eyes of stupid guys who do podcasts like myself, just to give you an A+ grade because I had no expectations. Therefore, you're blowing them out of the water just by being in the lineup and providing what you're providing. And who doesn't like a nice, fun shootout move and a cool nickname like Costco? Where do you have Kirkland?
Well, I didn't even think Justin Kirkland would play a game in the NHL this season. So
me neither.
I mean, I give him an A++++++ because my expectations were so low for him. And like you said, he's just been an amazing story. He's literally been the most productive forward on the Calgary Flames this year. When you look at things like assists per 60, points per 60 at 5-on-5, he's literally first on the team. You look at some of the underlying numbers. The Calgary Flames have outscored their opposition 10-3 with Kirkland on the ice at 5-on-5. 10-3. Like that is a crazy stat for a guy that we thought was going to be in the AHL all year. And then, like you mentioned, the best part of Kirkland has been that shootout move. Calgary Flames have won 3 shootouts because of him. Like, those are 3 big points, especially when we get close to the end of the year and they're battling for a playoff spot. Those are going to be some really, really important points that they secured. Mm-hmm. And it's because of Justin Kirkland and his signature Costco move there. So he's been great. I'd personally like to see him maybe even get a little bit more ice time over guys like potentially Pospisil if he's not going, or Huberdeau if he's not going. I wouldn't mind seeing Kirkland get a little bump in the lineup just to see what he can do. See if they can stretch this out a little bit more. But yeah, probably been the best story of the season for the Calgary Flames so far. It's been a lot of fun.
8 points in 18 games. The smile on his face after his first game is a good memory for hockey fans who enjoy this hockey team, and good stories like Justin Kirkland. Okay, back to some doom and gloom because this next guy on the list also is going to get a D grade from me. There's not a lot to say when you don't see or don't notice an Andrei Kuzmenko in the lineup. It's a pretty disappointing day for him. There's no creativity on a lot of nights. The expectations for me was this guy was going to come in here and be close to a point per game type of player, producer, help that power play score goals, help the offense move along here. And he really has done the opposite of that. One single goal all season long for Kuzmenko. He's getting 15 and a half minutes per night. The upside to that is his one goal has been on the power play. So 5-on-5, 0 goals. He has 9 points in total. There's not a lot I can say about Kuzmenko that's going to be positive other than the one power play goal. So I'll throw it over to you, Robert, because this guy is just not meeting expectations. And they were very simple expectations. Just produce points and help the offense, and he's not doing it.
Yep, I agree with you. And the crazy thing about Kuzmenko in that one goal is that it was a tip. And that's great.
Yes.
A goal is a goal. But Andrei Kuzmenko has not beat a goalie with a shot in 21 games this season. And for a guy who is as talented as he is, a guy that scored 39 goals with the Vancouver Canucks just 2 seasons ago, for him not to be able to beat a goalie with one shot through 21 games is crazy. My expectations for him were very high, just like you. I thought he could be a point per game, even push to be over a point per game based off of what I saw in Vancouver in his first season and how he finished last season. But it's just gone so wrong for him. And I don't know, like I think I've talked about it a couple of times on this podcast, but I think the skating is a big reason why he just doesn't have that dynamic speed where he can beat people. I find he gets way too fancy sometimes. I think he tries to do things that he shouldn't with the puck. Tries to fit pucks into very small windows. He's not able to get shots off. He's barely able to get shots on goal. It's been an ugly start to the season for Kuzmenko, and I really believe that he's probably the biggest reason why the power play has struggled all season. That guy, your power play should be running through him. He's the most talented player on this team. He has the best hands, probably the best vision, but he just hasn't been able to put it all together yet. And I think it's one of the reasons why they've struggled. And like you kind of mentioned there with Kadri at the end of your rant there, it's this Calgary Flames team is a top 10 team in the NHL, pushing for first place in the Pacific Division. And Nazem Kadri, Jonathan Huberdeau, and Andrei Kuzmenko have all fallen well below expectations. They've all failed this season, yet the Flames are still in that position. Imagine what this team could do if those 3 guys could kind of live up to what is expected from them. The Flames could be like a really, really good team. So once again, your fingers are crossed. You're hoping and praying that guys like Kuzmenko can figure it out in the next 61 games here, because the Calgary Flames desperately need him.
And to piggyback off Robert's point there, that's Huberdeau at 10.5, Kadri at 7, Kuzmenko at 5.5. Your 3 highest paid forwards we're talking about here all get D grades. And if we were including F, I'm pretty sure they'd get Fs in there too. Your highest 3 paid players, all with the lowest grade we could give them. And then we put in context that this Flames team is still fighting for first in the conference. They're comfortably in a playoff spot right now. If you look at it overall, it's absolutely mind-boggling, absolutely wild. So when you give guys like Kirkland an A+, and some other guys we'll talk about in a little bit here who might get A's or B or higher than that, it's absolutely wild to think about where this team is, given the fact your highest paid 3 players forward-wise are absolute garbage so far this year. It's insane. The next guy on the list is going to get an A for me as well, because, again, expectations were extremely low. Ryan Lomberg was brought back to the Flames for one reason, and that was to provide the energy and the grit that the team was kind of lacking a little bit at times last season. And he's done exactly that. He's been out there. He's been a little fireball. He's knocking guys that are a foot taller than him over into big heaps. He's not shying away from anything. He's showing why he was part of a Stanley Cup winning franchise last year for Florida. He wasn't brought in here for points. He wasn't brought in here to be all, kid gloves. He's been coming in here like a wrecking ball, That was the expectations. He's doing exactly that. I'm going to give him an A grade because I've just loved what I've seen out of Lomberg this year and what he's provided for the Flames. And I don't want to understate, I do believe he brings a big level of leadership in that group as well. If you watch The Chase, the YouTube series that the Flames have been putting out there, he's in that locker room and he doesn't seem to shut up. He's always motivating someone. He's always talking to somebody, always trying to pull the team along. And I love seeing that from him. I didn't know that was part of his game when the Flames brought him back. Now seeing that, incredible. It's a great ad for the Flames. I give Lomberg an A.
Yeah, you know what? If we were just doing off the ice, Lomberg gets an A+. I think everything you said there is so true. Great leader, brings so much energy to this team, which I think was something that they were missing last season. I think the team was like pretty down from a morale standpoint, just because of all the trades and all the crap that was happening around the organization. Lomberg has really brought a lot of energy, a lot of positive energy back to that dressing room. I think he means a ton to the culture of this Flames team. So you love to see that. On the ice, I think he's been okay. I mean, you like the speed, you like the physicality, you like the toughness. The only thing is you might want to see a little bit more offense, because in Florida, I mean, he produced at a half decent rate. Like there were a couple of years where he was on pace to score double-digit goals and kind of be in that 20, 25 point range. This year, he only has 2 assists in 21 games, and he's played in every single game for the team. So I think you just like to see a little bit more offense from him, but every other aspect of the game, he's provided so much for this Flames team. So my letter grade will be a B, just because of the on ice portion. But when you take everything into consideration, it was hard not to give him an A. But yeah, it's been really, really impressed with him. It's been a great signing by Craig Conroy. Yeah,
no doubt. This next player, I've absolutely given the gears to Daniel Miromanov, if I can even say his name. Miromanov for me is this polarizing figure. I want to get your grade before I give my take on this player, because I changed it 3 or 4 different times before we started recording here today, Robert. Where do you stand on Miromanov and your letter grade for this player?
So the first month of the season, I would say he was a C, but then in the month of November here, I'd probably give him an A. So I'll land in the middle, and my official letter grade for him will be a B. I thought, you'd ranted about it a few times on the show. He did start slow. He did not look very good in the first month of the season. He just didn't look very comfortable with the puck. He looked slow decision making. He wasn't generating any offense. He wasn't doing much on the defensive side. And I actually thought he was bringing Mackenzie Weegar's game down a little bit too. But ever since the calendar's turned to November, I think him and Weegar have been critical for the Flames' success. That pairing has outscored their opposition 8-2 at 5-on-5. The Flames have been outscored 10-7 without them on the ice. So they're really tilting the ice in the Flames' favor when they're out there. And man, he kind of looks like a different player in November. Like he looks like there's a little bit more of a pep in his step. It looks like he's making some more, smart decisions with the puck. He scored an important goal a couple weeks ago. I've been a fan of his game recently, so I'll give Miromanov a B.
Man, I'm gonna feel like a jerk, but that's okay. I had him at a D for a while because everyone knows how I felt about the player and what he thought. I looked at last year's Miromanov, what we saw at the end of the season with Weegar, and those were my expectations. Be that defenseman, someone who is steady Eddie, can play with Weegar, and then hopefully we get some offense out of that. And we just didn't see that for the first month of the season. And then November turned and we saw flashes of it. And then I read your tweet today, Robert, where those stats you just gave. You tweeted those out. I read that tweet today, and your tweet actually convinced me to put a plus beside my grade and give him a C+. I think we're seeing growth from this player, but I need to see more to believe it. This, for me, at the moment, is this a flash in the pan? Is this just a really hot streak? I need to see more from him still. I think there's more that he could give to this Flames team, offensively, defensively. But I do like what we've seen the last few weeks from this player and allowing Weegar to play his game a little bit more confidently. I've liked that from him. I thought he had a really good game against the Rangers, probably his best game as a Flame. He was all over the place. He was actually positionally sound for once, which I really enjoyed. So I've seen the growth from Miromanov, so I didn't want to be too hard on him in the podcast today, but it was really hard to go anywhere above C+ on a grade for him because my expectations might have been a little unfair, but that's how we're grading this based on our expectations. So C+ for Miromanov, knowing that very well it could get better and better as the season goes on. I want to believe in this player. And if he can be a top 4 defenseman for the Flames, it answers a lot of other questions for this organization of who else can play on this back end down the road for the Flames. He's not old, he's not young, he's right in that middle group there, age-wise, but he's still a reliable guy if he can be a top 4 defenseman in the National Hockey League alongside Mackenzie Weegar. The next one on the list is a guy that you're really high on. You really pumped the tires of this guy. This guy's going to get A+ grade for me. Brayden Pachal has done everything you wanted and more from a third pair defenseman for the Flames. I had low expectations. I thought this guy was going to be one of those in and out guys, a number 7, number 8 for the Flames, a guy that they would play against heavier teams based on his skill set, a guy that wasn't going to count a lot of offense on. But he's been a lot better than that. He's been a steady guy. He's had a chance to play up with Weegar and Miromanov was struggling a little bit, and he's showing that he can be an everyday NHLer, and that's how Ryan Huska has been using this guy. He's been a lot better defensively than we saw last year. I thought he struggled at times last year for the Flames, but I like what I've seen out of him so far this year, and he's only got the 1 assist in 21 games, but that's not his game. You play 14 minutes a night, you're counted on not to get scored on, and that's what he's doing, and that's his job. So for me, I'm going to give him an A grade. Where do you have your guy in Brayden Pachal?
Yep, I got an A as well. I think he's been great on that third pair, and everything you need to know about Brayden Pachal is that he's played in every game this season. Mm-hmm. You would think heading into the year that probably Bean, Hanley, Barrie, and Pachal were all going to kind of come in and out of the lineup. That hasn't been the case. Pachal has played in all 21 games this year, and I think that shows the confidence that Ryan Huska has in him. And I love the physicality he brings to the blue line. You know, Kevin Ball and Mackenzie Weegar, Rasmus Anderson, like they're physical players, but they don't really lay out like punishing body checks, whereas Pachal does that. Like whenever you notice Pachal on the ice, it's because he's just smashing a guy against the boards. And I think that's an element that the Calgary Flames need on their blue line, and he's provided it this year. Like he's third on the team in hits, and he would be first, you know, if he ended up playing more, have had more ice time. He's first on the team in hits per 60s. So I think he's been great. I think he's a great number 6. It'll be interesting to see what the Flames end up doing with him. Yeah. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him or if they're hoping that some of the young guys are going to come up and take his spot next season, but I think he's been a really, really solid pickup on waivers. It's just, you know, the one thing you got to give the Calgary Flames credit for, and I know I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but Craig Conroy and the management team have done a really good job with pro scouting ever since Connie's taken over. They really haven't missed all that much on a player since he became GMs. So that's something that you gotta be super impressed by. It's something Brad Treliving was terrible at. So you know, it could really only go up from there, but Conroy's done a great job with that stuff, and Pachal is kind of one of the great examples of that. So yep, I got Pachal as an A. Been a big fan of his so far this year.
Yeah, really, really good for a waiver pickup for sure. This next player, I don't know anyone who would have the expectations that this guy would have met. Martin Pospisil for me has been one of the bigger disappointments of the season so far for the Flames. And not that he's been a bad player, it's just we haven't seen what we saw last year from Pospisil. And I think that's the expectations that were fair for this player. Go out there, be a muck to play against, you know, get your points, be a pest. He was asked to do a few different jobs this year, which I think, you know, didn't help him out or put him in a favorable spot. I give Pospisil a C grade just based on we're just not seeing it, and we're not seeing consistent enough of anything that's going to make you like what you see from Pospisil. There's been flashes of the guy we saw last year, just not consistent enough. I think now that they've moved him to the wing, we've seen him play with Kadri and Kuzmenko. We'll see that again this week, hopefully on the road trip, and hopefully we can see his game get back to what we saw last year. So for me, he's just not meeting expectations. Maybe a little bit because that's on the Flames for putting him in a different position and trying different things with him, but just not good enough for me. Where do you have Martin Pospisil?
Before I get my letter grade, I mentioned earlier in the podcast that there were 2 things I just haven't been a huge fan of when it comes to Ryan Huska this year. been a massive fan of the job he's done as head coach, but there's two things. And I said the first was his deployment of Jake Bean, and the second is how he's handled Martin Pospisil this season. I understood putting him at center. I supported putting him at center, but I think the Calgary Flames asked him to do way too much. We talked about this earlier in the season. They asked him be an asshole to play against, be incredibly physical, but don't take penalties, be very responsible defensively, but put up points, play on a line with Huberdeau and Mantha and be productive. It's just, you're asking so much of this player, and it's almost like you asked too much, and now he's overthinking the game, and he's lost what made him a really good player. And what makes him a great player is that physicality, is that ability to get under opponent's skin. And we have not seen that really at all this season. I know he's second on the team in hits right now, but when you compare it to last season, he's nowhere near effective from a physicality standpoint and agitation standpoint. And I think that's because the Flames put way too much on his plate and they put too much pressure on him. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping now that he's back on the wing, I'm hoping that he can get back to the game that he was playing last year. The big thing for me is just start getting under opponent's skin more. He hasn't done that at all this year. I haven't seen anyone chasing him around the ice. I haven't seen anyone really chirping him. The only time that really happened was against Philadelphia. That was the second game of the season. Pospisil got in a fight that night. And I wonder if that fight against the Flyers kind of spooked him a little bit, because we know he has the history with concussions. We know he has the history with those head trauma and head injuries. I'm almost wondering if he kind of woke up and went, whoa, I really don't want to fight. And I know if I continue to play this way and I continue to piss people off, I'm going to have to fight. And I wonder if he's kind of taken a step back from that part of his game. It'd be interesting to hear him talk about that and ask him a question about that. But that's what I'm seeing from my vantage point. So I have Pospisil as a C. I agree with you on the letter grade. He can be so much better. And I think if the Flames just take away all those responsibilities from him and he gets back to being a jerk, he can get back to being a B or an A level player for this team.
Yeah. Just let him play the wing, let him play his game, and that letter grade will just skyrocket. I'm absolutely certain of it. Just let him be who Martin Pospisil is. I think that grade will just naturally get itself B plus and into the A territory there. I'll let you go first on this next one here. This is kind of a player who takes a lot of hate on social media, and for me, he takes a lot of needless hate on social media. What do you think of Kevin Rooney, not Kevin Ball. Kevin Rooney's up next.
Yeah, I don't help because I've made some memes on Flames Nation this year, just with
you jerk,
kind of joking around about Kevin Rooney. So I guess I'm part of the problem when it comes to that. I would give Rooney a B. I mean, he's been kind of what you expected. He plays on the penalty kill with Michael Backlund, and he's been solid in that regard. That fourth line in general with him, Kirkland, and Lomberg has been very good for the Flames, and he is part of that. I'd like to see him probably get up to 50% in the faceoff circle. Right now he's about 46%, so you'd like to see him get that up a little bit. But, I mean, the expectations were low for Rooney. It's anytime he could contribute with offense, it's a bonus. I didn't really expect much from him in that regard, and that whole fourth line in general has been really solid. So I'll give Rooney a B. I think he's been just fine this year.
Rooney has two jobs for me. Kill some penalties. He took the spot of Elias Lindholm when he left. Kill some penalties, win some faceoffs. You mentioned faceoffs could be a little bit better, but he's been fine there, and he kills his penalties. I give him a B. He meets exactly what I thought he was, and he's just reliable on a fourth line role. So for the 10-ish minutes he gets tonight, I don't understand the hate he gets on social media. People clamoring for all these other players from the AHL to come up and do the same job. Well, you want your kids to play bigger minutes in the AHL. Let this aging veteran who's done this job for years continue to do this job, and he does it at a fine level. So I think the hate he gets on social media is a little bit over the top. I understand why people want to see other players, but you're asking him to do very simple things, and he goes out there and he does it for you, and you win with guys who can just do jobs for you like this. It's a thankless task sometimes, that fourth line center role. It's not as easy as some think it might be, and he's just fine at it, and that's all you look for Kevin Rooney is just fine. I give him a B. Next up is Yegor Sharangovich coming off the injury. He's been slow offensively to get going here. Interested to see where you go with this one too, Robert. I want to just give him a B. And I struggled to give him that B because I know the expectations for this player was to score goals, and he hasn't been scoring goals. We saw this last week. We saw 2 absolute missiles of shots. And so I see his game coming around. I see the progression that he plays with and what he can provide for this team. And since he's been back on the power play, it's slowly getting a little bit better. I'm going to give him a B grade, knowing that his game is progressing in the right way, knowing the goals are coming here. But I absolutely expect everyone else to be a little bit more down on his game and maybe give him a lower grade here. But for me, the expectations for Sharangovich are going to continue to rise if he continue to score goals here. Interested what you give Sharangovich and what you've made of him so far.
I'm with you. I also have a B. I think, like, just based off what you see on social media and just the interactions you have with people, a lot of people would probably have him in that C category, but I just think you have to be patient with him returning from that injury. That looked like a really awkward fall in the preseason there. It looked like it could have been something way more serious. The Flames were lucky that it wasn't. And I think it's just taken him some time to kind of get back and find his rhythm. It's tough to miss a few weeks and then jump right back into the middle of a regular season when everyone's kind of on top of their game. So, and then another thing too, on top of that, is when he was back in the lineup, he played a lot of minutes at center. And that's asking a lot of a player who's just come back from an injury, who's trying to find his timings, trying to gain his footing, to put him down the middle of the ice in a position where he's not very good, I think is asking too much of him. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to give him a B. And the last couple games, like, there's definitely a recency bias for me. You've started to see him be a little more dynamic. You've started to see him get that shot off, especially on the power play, like you said. A couple of piss missiles for 2 goals in his last 2 games. He's looking like a threat again on the power play, and that's what the Flames are paying him to do. So I'm going to go with a B. I'm really looking forward to see how he progresses here in the last 61 games. I wonder if it's going to be kind of like a similar script to last season where he got off to a slow start and then really took off. I wonder if we're going to see kind of something similar happen here.
One point I forgot to mention on my little answer there was the PK has gotten a little bit better since he's been back doing some penalty killing as well.
Good point.
His defensive side of the game is a little bit understated among Flame fans, and I don't think we realize what he actually brings at his own end of the ice when he's playing. So it is about goals with this guy, but defensively he does and is counted on to do a little bit of heavy lifting for the Flames. Next up, we get to be talk about one of the goaltenders next here. This is the guy who gets who for the most part of the season got all the tougher starts, was put in almost unwinnable situations. That Vancouver game comes to mind where it was the 5th game in 5 cities in 8 days, and he was just put out there to lose a hockey game. But he continues to battle, and he continues to put forth why he should be in the conversation as an NHL goaltender. He's done very, very well in the games he's been given. And I really think it's understated how far this guy's come since a big hip injury, his hip surgery, I should say. Dan Vladar is sporting a 267 goals against average, a 903 save percentage, in 607 minutes of play. He's done very well for the Flames this year, and a lot better than I thought he was going to be. If you listen to the early episodes of this podcast, I was talking Devin Cooley this and how great it could be for that. I don't know about his hip, about Vladar's hip and what he could be. So my expectations for Dan Vladar were just be an NHL goaltender, give us average, and he's done more than that. I'm going to give Vladar an A grade because he has given you more than just average goaltending, and he's battled his ass off doing it. So I like what I've seen from Dan Vladar. He's putting himself in a category of, hey, maybe Colorado's looking for a goaltender. This could be a guy the Flames could capitalize and recoup some assets on. I like Dan Vladar. I give him an A. What say ye, Mr. Munich?
Ye says an A. I totally agree with you. I think he's been kind of dealt a tough hand this year. We've talked about it a bunch on this podcast, but here are the games that he's started. So he's played the Canucks twice, the Oilers twice, the Hurricanes, Golden Knights, Devils, Wild, and then he has the Kraken and the Sabres. It's a lot of good hockey teams on that list there, and a lot of those situations are on the road. They're second of a back-to-back, or They're like in Vancouver, like you said, when they're playing their 5th game in 8 nights. He's been put in really difficult situations this year, and he's played really well. When you take a look at the stats, he's about top 25 in the league in almost every major statistical goaltending category, which is super impressive. And just pulling up Dustin Wolf starts here. So comparing Vladar's starts to Wolf. So Dustin Wolf has played games against Philadelphia, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Winnipeg, Utah, Montreal, Boston, LA, Nashville, Islanders, Rangers. So, I mean, the quality of competition is significantly more difficult when Dan Vladar's in the net. But I really like that from the Flames. I think it's been really smart. I think it's been one of the reasons why Wolf has been so good this year. And I hope they kind of continue to do that for a little bit more before unleashing Dustin. But I think you got to give Dan Vladar all the credit in the world. I'm with you at the beginning of the season. I thought that going with Cooley was the right way to go about it and exploring the trade market for Dan Vladar. But I mean, he's been really good, and his trade value has increased substantially since the start of the season. So I will agree with you. I will give Dan Vladar an A. He's been very good in tough situations, and the Flames goaltending in general has carried this team. It's the only reason they are where they are right now.
Darren Hayes, a longtime blog writer for the Flames, been with multiple different outlets, put out a tweet about the unfair hate that Dan Vladar, criticism Dan Vladar is getting from Flame fans based on just numbers alone. Pay attention to more than just your basic win-loss record when it comes to Dan Vladar, and look at where he's playing, how he's been played, what he's been asked to do in those situations, and you'll be impressed with Dan Vladar. I've really liked what we've seen from him so far this year. This next guy is a guy I absolutely love, but it's going to sound like I don't love him because the expectations for Mackenzie Weegar from me were sky high. He had a very good season for the Flames last year. He was coming off of like a 20-goal defensive season. I thought we would see a bit of regression from Weegar, but I thought we would see him absolutely fly out of the gate. Part of it might have been who he was playing with. Everyone knows Miromanov. And so I thought he got off to a slower start this year, and he's slowly getting back to it, and he's been very good in the month of November here. I wanted to give this guy A's across the board, but you got to go versus your expectations. I'm going to give him a B+ because my expectations may be too unfair to Mackenzie because of how high I thought his game could be. I thought he could still get to 15, 16 goals this year, and he still might. I thought he could be close to a 70-point defenseman if his game rounds the right way, run a power play, lofty expectations coming off what we saw from him last year, which is why the grade for him so far is a little bit lower because I like to run wild sometimes with players that I really like and I know are capable of big things, and that's what Mackenzie Weegar is. He hasn't been bad this year. He has 12 points in 21 games. He's playing almost 24 minutes a night and three power play minutes a night. But, you know, that's what Mackenzie Weegar brings you. He's a steady Eddie guy for you. And when you have ridiculously high expectations, guys like me are going to have to give his grade a little bit lower because of our own expectations. Robert, I know I rambled there a little bit, but what do you say about Mackenzie Weegar and your letter grade for the guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super fair. I would have him as a B. I don't think he's exceeded expectations this year, but I think he has been really good. So I will give him that B grade. And there's really not much to add to Weegar's season based off of what you said. I mean, like the month of November, he's probably been one of their best, if not their best player, best defenseman. Flames have outscored their opposition 8-2, 5-on-5 when he's on the ice. I think he's been a big reason why Miromanov started to turn his game around. And then there's also just the off the ice stuff where I'm such a fan of this guy. I think he's the emotional leader of this team. I know Michael Backlund wears the C, but I think guys like Lomberg and Weegar are massive in that locker room. So I really, really like that from him. And I've been really impressed. I thought he started the season just okay, maybe even a little bit below average, but he's come back after a bit of a sluggish start and has just been on fire. So I'll give him a B, and I'm really excited to see where his game's going to go for the rest of the season here. Just based off of the way he's played in November, you know, I'm really wondering if his game is just going to skyrocket. It's really going to take off and hopefully turns into one of the defensemen who are going to play for Team Canada, the Four Nations. That'd be super cool for him and the Calgary Flames. So I'll give him a B so far this year.
Yeah, I love to see him with Team Canada as well. I like what he is in the media as well for the Flames team. He's very honest in his answers and just really good ambassador for the Flames organization. And I think we can thank him for helping get that new rink on the go here, as he stated when he first got here. These last two players are a chance for both of us to gloss over two guys that I think we're both very high on. We'll start with the guy in goal that everyone's been loving since he was drafted in round number 7, a guy that people have been clamoring for years, a guy who I just said, hold on, guys, let this guy develop. And he has developed at a faster pace than I would have thought. He's done a lot better than I thought coming into the National Hockey League. I thought he would have his struggles being a full-time NHL goaltender, but Dustin Wolf has taken whatever expectations you have and have punted them off a cliff. He has just taken off here. He is the second player to get an A+ rating from me on today's show, because my expectations for him were very similar to that of Dan Vladar. Just be a serviceable NHL goaltender. We see the numbers, we see how he plays, we love how he acts, and he's been more than just give me average NHL goaltender. This guy is incredible, and I know Robert will have numbers on him here. He's in the top of a lot of different categories. We have certain news outlets claiming Vezina conversation for this guy, Calder conversation for this guy. It's a little rich for my blood right now, but at the same time, he has done everything and more to show that he deserves to be starting games in the National Hockey League. He deserves to be getting regular starts for the Calgary Flames. And each game you put him out there, he comes back with a performance that just makes you go, wow, this guy's really, really good. I've seen comparisons to Kiprusoff 2.0. I've seen a lot of different things that fans are just glossing over this player for good reason. We love a good story. My question for Dustin Wolf, though, is how consistent can you be over the full season? And we'll see how it goes. But for right now, A+ for Dustin Wolf. Love what you're seeing from the young netminder.
Can't argue with that. I would say he's been the team MVP this year because the Calgary Flames struggle so much to score goals. And when you take a look at their defensive numbers, like, they're a good defensive team. They're definitely not a great defensive team. The reason why their goals against and their goals allowed is so low and some of the best in the NHL is because of Dustin Wolf, especially in the month of November. He's been, in my opinion, the best goalie in the NHL. The Calgary Flames in the month of November, they're 7-2-2, yet they have the second fewest goals per game in the NHL. That says it all right there. And Dustin Wolf has 5 of those wins under his belt. He's just phenomenal. He's the best goalie at 5-on-5 in the NHL right now. My expectation for him coming into the year was, I thought there were going to be a lot of highs like we're seeing right now, but I also thought there were going to be like quite a few lows, kind of like what we saw last year. I thought there were going to be starts where he was going to struggle and he was just going to have to figure out the NHL game. But it's looked like he's figured it out way faster than I could have ever expected, because there's only been one start this year where he hasn't been good, and that was in Utah. But the whole Flames team was absolute dog shit on that night. And he struggled in that game. That's it. That's the only game he struggled. It's the only game where he's kind of looked small. It's the only game where he's been out of position. Every other game, he gives this Flames team not only like a chance to win, beyond that, if that's even a thing. He only lets in 1 or 2 goals a game, or he gets a shutout. He is the sole reason why this team is in the position that they are right now. He has been absolutely remarkable. I'm buying the Calder hype. I don't know if I want to go Vezina just yet with guys like Connor Hellebuyck playing so well, but man, if he keeps this up, holy crap. I mean, I don't know how he couldn't be in that Vezina or Calder conversation. But one thing I will say is I think we should kind of temper our expectations just a little bit. Yes, he's been fantastic to start this year, but we also have to remember he's a rookie. He's a young guy. He's still figuring out the league. If he does happen to go through a bit of a down stretch, that's okay. Just stay patient with him. He's the long-term answer. He's proved that he's going to be the guy moving forward, and I'm super, super excited for him. So yeah, he's an A+. Love Dustin Wolf.
Yeah. There's not enough nice things people can say about Dustin Wolf right now for a good reason. And one thing I will say about Dustin is he's earned every positive thing written about him on social media. He just gone out there and worked and has earned every single one of them. I'm going to try not to gloss too much about the last player here because I've done it on a few episodes here. I'm going to try, and it was hard for me to keep my expectations tempered and not be too biased because of my enjoyment of this player, what I think he can be at the National Hockey League level, what I've seen from him in junior. I know what this player is capable of. Connor Zary is last on the list of players here to talk about. The Flames have given him a couple of different roles on this team so far this season. He's now playing at center, which I really like this experiment. I hope it goes on for a long time for the Flames. I hope he can provide the answer the Flames are looking for as far as being a long-term center for this organization. He's gone out here and he's playing 17 and a half minutes a night. He's got himself 10 points in 21 games. He's playing 2.5 minutes of power play time a night, 13 blocks on the season, 9 hits on the year. So he's performing very, very well. My expectations for Zary was to take a step forward from what we saw last year. And I think we're seeing that slowly. So once again, I took my bias out of it because everyone knows how much I love this player. And I'm going to give him a B+ because he's meeting expectations and he's slowly starting to exceed what I thought he could be for the Flames this season. Like to see a little bit more goals out of him. Definitely need to see more out of the faceoff dot. He's just 36% in the faceoff circle right now. So I need to see a little bit more from his game, but he's learning that center position on the fly at the NHL level. Not an easy thing to do, but I think he's capable of it. I love Connor Zary. I love what he brings to this lineup. I think there is a long-term centerman there, maybe a 2C for this team down the road here. I'm liking what I see from this guy, and so I'll throw it over to you, Robert. What say ye about Connor Zary and what you've seen from him?
So I think the best way I would describe it is I love the way he's playing. I love the process, and I love just like the offense that he's generating every single night he's on the ice. But he does need to produce more, and I do think that's a fair criticism. So because of that, I'll give him a B. If he can just start to score some more goals, if his line mates can start to put some of the passes that he gives them to the back of the net a little more often, the sky is the limit for this kid. I really believe that he can be that 60 to 70 point player year after year after year. I do think he needs to work on his shot. It's probably the one part of his game that's not quite at that, top 6 NHL caliber. He's a good skater. He's a really good puck handler, great hands. And another underrated part of his game is that this kid is tough, man. Like there are a lot of nights where Connor Zary, he gets hit hard and he gets his ass kicked sometimes, but you always see him get back up and you always see him get out on the next shift and make plays and just continue to move forward. It's really, really impressive. So I just think it's only a matter of time before this kid just blows up from an offensive standpoint. So giving him a B might be a little bit harsh. I really like the way his game is trending right now, and I'm with you. Love the way he's playing at center ice, but he does need to produce a little bit more because he is super talented and he is generating so much offense. It's time for him and his line mates to start putting some pucks to the back of the net.
The downside for Zary is one of his line mates is a guy we absolutely trashed earlier in the show in Huberdeau, but he's also playing with Blake Coleman, a guy we know that can help a young kid increase his game, increase his role from each and every night. So I'm really looking forward to what we see down the road from Connor Zary. I think B+ the grades we gave him are fair because the expectations are there and we see the process, but now we got to see the results of the process, and I think that will come. To wrap up the show here, I know we are a little bit longer than we normally are, but we want to get everyone an opportunity to talk about all these players. We want to end with one more person, and that's Coach Huska, because I don't think social media is talking enough. I don't even think the Fan 960 is talking enough or Sportsnet is talking enough about the job that Ryan Huska is doing with this Calgary Flames team. For me right now, sure, call me biased if you want, he's in the Jack Adams conversation for what he is doing this season with the Calgary Flames versus the expectations people came in here. A lot of people thought this Flames team would be irrelevant in any sort of playoff conversation, that this would be a bottom 10 team. They would be, I even saw people having them in the top 5 of the draft lottery. Like, people were not high on this Flames team. Nobody thought this team had a chance to do anything. And who knows, it might fall off a heavy cliff down the road here, and the Flames might end up there. But for right now, versus the expectations into this season of this team versus where they are right now, How can you not give Ryan Huska an A grade? I know you mentioned two things that you weren't particularly fond of with the way Huska's run things this year. I only have the one criticism of Ryan Huska, and that is his usage of Martin Pospisil. Give the guy a role, let him play. Other than that, I've liked what Ryan Huska has done. I like his in-game adjustments. I like what he allows his coaching staff to do and how they work as a unit on the bench. I like the way that Jamie Pringle's helping him, overturn some of these goals or these calls with his video review. This is all because Ryan Huska, I think, has come in here and established a positive culture, a culture where if you work, you're going to be rewarded, and we're not going to accept anything less than your best every single night. We've seen him sit guys down. Kuzmenko's rid the pine. Huberto's rode the pine. We've seen other guys elevate. Kirkland played third line minutes for a night to elevate his role because of the way he was playing. I give Ryan Huska an A because what we thought this Flame team was going to be to where they are now, how can you not? He is doing everything in his power to make this a good franchise, a good team, and a hard team to play against. Robert, your grade for Ryan Huska and your thoughts on the job that he's done this season for the Flames.
Well, just think about the position that Ryan Huska was put in when he was hired as head coach.
Yeah.
Daryl Sutter had just finished his last year at the team. A bunch of veteran players had asked for trades. The culture was broken in Calgary. And then his first season, there's 7 pending unrestricted free agents. He has to deal with that storm all season long. There's this I don't like the phrase dark cloud because everybody says it, but there was this kind of dark cloud around the team with the kind of pending doom of upcoming trades of very good core veteran players. And Ryan Huska had to somehow get his team to buy into what the Calgary Flames are doing from a culture perspective. And he's done it brilliantly this season. Absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. To go from where the team was from a culture perspective in Sutter's last year to where it is now, it's night and day. And you have to give Ryan Huska all the credit in the world for doing that. He's got this team believing. He's got this team bought in to playing a hard style of hockey. It's a lot of blocking shots. It's a lot of checking. It's a lot of physicality. It's probably not fun for these players, but they're doing it anyway. And we're seeing the results. Also helps that Dustin Wolf has been the best goalie in the NHL. That always makes a coach look better. Yeah. You have to put that into the consideration. But overall, man, I think Ryan Huska deserves an A. It's not necessarily from like an X's and O's perspective because we're not in the dressing room. We don't know like the exact style of hockey these guys are playing. But just from like a culture perspective, leadership, the way he deals with the media, all that kind of stuff, you wrap it into your analysis, and I don't think you can give him a grade anything other than an A. I think he's just been super, super strong. He's been the perfect voice for this team. Another great move by Craig Conroy is to hire this guy. Been nothing but impressed with Ryan Huska, so I will give him an A. I am a big, big fan of his.
He almost got the A+ for me if he just would have solved that Pospisil issue a little earlier. I would have given him an A+. Just we can talk all day long about these players and the job that they do, but it all stems back to the one thing that you mentioned there as well. Ryan Huska rebuilt this culture of this team, and he rebuilt the standard of this team from almost the ground up. And he holds players to that standard, and it's incredible to watch him work that bench each and every night. Big fan of the guy. I could listen to him in the media all day long, too, the way that he talks the game. Robert, before we sign off here, is there anything we missed talking about this Flames team that you want to bring on today's episode? If not, tell the folks what's coming up on Flames Nation and where they can find you and your work.
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot. I mean, that was a great episode. Like, thoroughly enjoyed doing that. I really hope our listeners enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's been a really interesting start to the season for the Flames. There's been a lot of positives. There's been a lot of negatives. So there's lots to talk about. It's been pretty entertaining. So it's great. And then, at Flames Nation, I got an article coming out on Tuesday. It's just about how goaltending has been carrying the Calgary Flames this year. So be sure to check that out. And just follow me on Twitter /X @RingOfFireCGY.
Flames play in Ottawa, Detroit, an afternoon game in Columbus, which should be pretty emotional there, and in Pittsburgh, all before we talk next on the podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you get your podcasts at. Follow us across social media at Red Mile Rundown or myself at Vintage Johnny 84. We appreciate your extra time this week, folks, for sticking with us. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let us know where we might have messed up or where you have differed from our opinions on some of these players. Enjoy the hockey this week. We look forward to talking to you guys next week on the show, and we will see you next time here on the Red Mile Rundown.